I'm Alessandro Linari. I lead the people analytics team in Vodafone UK. And today I thought I spend a few minutes to discuss and show you how we're using data and analytics to drive performance in retail. And I'll show you some hopefully nice and interesting examples. So first of all, a bit of introduction. Although I think everybody more or less know what Vodafone does. So we're a global telecommunication company. But it's just interesting maybe to spend 1 minute to explain how we organize. So we have a group which is based in headquarters in London and is responsible for coordination across all countries. So has a more strategic, if you like, horizontal role. And then we have OpCos, which are responsible for local markets. So you can see them as verticals, if you like. The scope of each of these organizations is slightly different. I'm sorry. And this is also reflected in the way we do analytics and we approach the data problem in HR. So whereas in the group level, they're really looking at challenges around coordinating the data and together, providing global tools that are valid for all countries in all languages, etc. So assessment tools, recruitment tools, engagement tools, etc. HRIS system, that's a major thing. Lots of HR operations for the function of the company, reports and dashboards that are valid ideally for everybody. The way we operate in the UK is, if you like, in the UK, but I should say in all opcos, if you like, narrower, but more focused on specific business problems. And in particular, we are extremely aligned to the business. So this is, for me, it's quite an interesting, it's due to different models, but the model that we have in the UK is something I will, you hopefully will have a feeling on what it means. So just to give you a very brief example, and then I should move on, the type of problems we approach is, say, productivity analysis, but maybe for call centers, for the call centers population, and then team effectiveness in retail, not just for everybody, but like this is what I'm going to talk today, or location analysis, where should we redeploy part of our staff, etc., and so on and so forth. But the key takeaway of this is that everything we do is always aligned to business priority that then translates into an HR priority and so on and so forth. Now let's move on to retail. And let's see what the problem is. So as David mentioned earlier, I was nodding, although I couldn't say, I couldn't agree with you because I was on mute. We have a strong retail presence in the UK. Many of you will have heard about the crisis of the high street, and the retail sector is heavily hit even before this unfortunate pandemic, but heavily hit by the transformation of consumer behaviors into becoming online consumers, etc. However, in the UK, we've always believed that the retail has a future. However, it will only have a future if we can transform it. So about 3 years ago, we embarked in a major transformation program, which had the three main areas of attack, if you like. One was we recognized the importance of localization and closeness to community, and so we of our stores, and we embarked in this franchise program that is about we'll transform where we will move to almost 70% of our estate to franchise, and then we recognized the importance of putting the customer at the center of the retail experience. So we had the major rethinking of our retail experience. You could see the flagship store in London, but I think, to be honest with you, that this is something that all major retailers have realized is required to keep people in the physical stores. But the third pillar of this, and this is a key because the other two wouldn't work otherwise, is rethinking completely the role of the advisor, who they are, what they, how do we measure, of course, but really what they should do. So there is this other big work stream that is ongoing at the moment, which is called Advisor of the Future. Now, this is what I'm talking today. And because we believed, we thought about a year ago that there was a part of this work stream that could be tackled or could be looked at through the lenses of data and analytics. And I think this is very interesting because it's from an analytics profession, an HR analytics professional, it's very interesting because it's a perfect playground because it merges HR with business. So from our point of view, we could summarize the problem of creating the advisor of the future into this statement. So we want to create the best teams that drive sales, customer experience, and make Vodafone a great place to work. Now I'm going to show you what we did from a very analytical point of view. The presentation is going to be slightly technical, but the idea is that it should be understandable by everybody because that's what you do as an analytics professional when you talk to the business. So first of all, the business problem. So first thing is understand who we are and who we want to become. We are the current workforce. And so if you look at the current workforce, we needed to understand there is something we do good, and these are our top teams. So first question is, who are our top teams, and how do we measure their success? And this is the focus of the talk. And then, of course, you want to know, okay, if they're good, we want to retain them. We did a nice piece of analysis around attrition, which I'm not going to talk about. I think everybody is quite aware what attrition analytics is. And then in terms of who we want to become, who we want to be in the future, we first need to understand what good looks like, what do we mean with good, and eventually that again can be approached in an analytical way. I'll give you glimpses of that, and on the back of that, we then clearly there's a more HR standard, if you like, HR thing, which is what training do we need to make people what we want. And of course, it will have repercussion on the resourcing strategy because we need to know who do we want to hire. Now, the first part is clearly who are our top teams. And I think you heard, many of you will heard this many times. If you talk to an ops team, they will say, well, we already know who our best teams are. Because they look at sales, they look at KPIs, but in reality, who are they really? Because the reality is that your ops teams will know who the best sales, who sells the most, or where customers are happier. And this is no secret. Our biggest stores are selling the most. That's not a surprise. That's why they're big. But in reality, what we're really trying to understand here is, oops, I'm sorry for this. What we're really trying to understand here is who are the teams that are able to make the most out of what they have at hand. So the first part of the process was agreeing some KPIs with the business, some KPIs that are important for our teams. There was a bit of back and forth. There was an analytics element to it that I will not go into details, but we settled on 6 main KPIs, which we then divided in 3 macro categories: so growth, customer experience, and culture. Now, if you see, you might notice that these are very aligned to the business objectives. So if you guys don't mind, I'll just scroll back for a second, because the business objective was create the best teams that drive sales, customer experience, and make Vodafone a great place to work. So this is quite key to me, because if we are discussing with the business, we need to talk the business language and focus on what is important for them. The other interesting element here is that the first 2 set of KPIs are coming from business data, whereas the third is coming from HR data. So that's the nice place where the 2 come together. So the second step was doing extensive data analysis. So I don't want to go into details of everything. However, I did notice that it was important if the business people, if HRBPs need to understand the results of an analytical piece of some algorithm or something, especially if it's a bit complicated, they need to get a glimpse of what's going on behind the scenes. They need to trust not just the person, but that is done this work, but also the work itself. And so I'll just give you a very quick overview. So the first thing that it is important to point out is that when you do this type of analysis, you really want to keep your KPIs to a minimum. For the nerds, this is called curse of dimensionality. Basically, unless your data set is big, the more KPIs you have, the worse the end results will be. So we settled on 6. We took a few out because of that. When I say the data set is small, we are talking about a few hundred stores, between 100, 400. So that's a small data set. Six KPIs is really stretching it. The second thing to understand is that we need to compare apples with apples, really. So big stores, small stores, central London, countryside, we cannot expect to compare them directly. So we need some clearly, I mean, this is obvious, we need some normalization. So I clearly used, when a KPI or any measure is not already expressed as a percentage of the target, you need to be put lots of care into bucketing them correctly. So if you have a small and big, then you will make sure that you are saying how good along this dimension my team is compared to everybody else in the same class of small stores, for example. So something I've done is a main thing in my case was store size and geographic location, for example, but there are a few others. Now, the third very important thing is there is never a winner, absolute winner. So each KPI will always tell different stories, which is also why we can't use too many. So first message is you need to accept the compromise that in this screenshot, the store at the top left is better at growth, whereas the store at the bottom right is better at customer experience, but none of them is a winner. And so you need to accept that you need to find a methodology to still find someone that is better. In this specific case, really what we are looking at is probably something that is around here. So in reality, the compromise means that you can't say that the most successful team is here because they might be good at something but not at something else. And so really you're finding the best combination of your KPIs. Finally, the last thing to point out is that in real life, like in a retail setting, but I would say in any real setting, there are always inconsistencies over time because there are local events. I think this spike was caused by some major event, something. I have no idea, to be honest, but because I did look at it a year ago, but it was something like a major concert in the area or something. So, you know, lots of people unexpectedly go into the store, they buy a lot, etc. And also there are bad and good weeks. So really, if you want to know who are your best teams are, you really want to know not just how they did last month, which is, by the way, what operational teams focus on, but you want to know how good they have been the last 6 months in our case. So now, to put all this together, just a glimpse of the algorithm. So in reality, so what we said already that what are we looking for? We are looking for, if you consider only two KPIs, growth and customer experience, you look at something, you want all your stores to be here at the top right corner. You want your teams to be the best at growth, the best at customer experience. In reality, and this is real data for a few months ago, in reality, that's not happening. In reality, you have someone that is better at growth, someone else that is better, etc., and so on and so forth. So the methodology that I have adopted is to take this square, if you like, and then start working backwards and see who are the first bunch of stores that I'll meet. These are the very high performers, and then you have the high performers a bit farther back, and then you have medium, low, and very low performance, and so on. And the other thing is to notice is that, and this was a message really, I think you appreciate this, but this was a message for our business people. You don't want to know who is the best in absolute terms because there's always an approximation attached to the data. You want to know which set of teams are the best, and that's why I have labels rather than actual numbers, which I do have, but I don't display them. And this is just a pretty picture to show that along the 3 dimensions, the scale. This is for the nerds, by the way, some equations, but this is showing that again, you want everybody to be here, then you start working backwards. Now, the element that I added to this is that you can add weights if you really want to maybe give more importance to one of your dimensions rather than the others, but it's not. It depends on the specific case. So basically, what I do here is on a monthly basis, because that's how we measure our performance. I will build this sort of classification of all our stores, and I will know for in that month who was great, etc., who was the best and who was the worst. And second step was to add the time element. So I'm not happy with just looking at monthly performance, said it before. So really what I do is I take 6 months of data. So here's an example, and I combine them in a way that say, this is August 19. This is the score of that specific team obtained as a combination of all the data that they have between March and August, and then July. So it's a rolling window. July is between February and July, and so on and so forth. And this is the details. And the other element that I've added is that we really want to not over penalize the teams, so I give more importance to more recent data. So now this type of discussion, before I move on, this is the type of discussion I had with our senior leaders in retail. And a nice comment, I hope I was clear enough, but the nice comment I got out of this from one of them was something like, I don't know how, but I think I understood what you're talking about, which to me is a sort of good result to say that we are getting somewhere that has a chance to be well accepted by the business as well as the analytics community. So putting it all together, how much time do I have? So putting it all together, this resulted in a set of dashboards. You can see I have a demo. I don't know if I have time, probably not. I'll show you them very quickly, actually. And this is just to show you. So I put everything together in a set of dashboards that is accessible by HRBPs and selected people in retail. So this is the main dashboard. You see, it's dynamic. People can see, for example, for this store, what their KPIs are and how it was in the previous 6 months. And there is another one here that allows you to compare across different. It's a bit more for troubleshooting. I have to say this is not used a lot, but it's something used. And also, I also currently have one admin that I only see that allows me to change a few parameters when I was building the algorithms. So this is the result. So the question now is, I enjoyed doing this work, and I believe it's a nice small piece of analytics. How it is used. It has been well received. There were lots of discussion on how to use it, but I can say that this is now used for performance management. First of all, we have HRBPs have monthly performance reviews with regional managers, and they are actually using it to track their stores and to have these discussions. These are just 2 examples. We are putting a few they are putting a few stores under action plan because of this. I know this is silly to say, but the plan for Vodafone is that we don't try to send people away, but just most cases we try to move people around, because sometimes we found that managers may perform badly in a specific store. Sometimes it's just the way it is, and they seem to be going great when they're moved somewhere else. Now, I think this is, and we discussed this with the team, we think this is probably because they realize the seriousness of the situation. On one hand, they realize the seriousness of the situation, and they're given the tools and the training to correct it. So it's a kind of fresh start, so they take it properly. On the other hand, sometimes if the condition with the rest of the team, if the relationship is deteriorated, sometimes there's nothing you can do and nobody can do anything. I could show you this actually, but another way it's used, and this is a comment I received from one specific regional manager, is that they like to use it for discussion as a source for structured conversation. I think what they're really trying to say is that it takes a bit of emotional element out of the performance review. It's almost like this is almost putting the blame on the tool, almost, rather than trying to have a difficult conversation saying, look, this is what the data is saying, tell me why it is saying that. Plus, we're using that as the other number of tools, which are around gender diversity, attrition, dashboards, etc. So the other thing the results of these analyses have been used for, and I think it's interesting, and it would be interesting to development for the future, is in the area of workforce of the future. So we started asking ourselves, okay, what good looks like for us? What do we want to become? And so we decided to start from where we are now, and we looked at who our top store managers were and who our bottom store managers were. And we put them through a behavioral assessment. These are a number of dimensions. These are lots of questions. We had a team designing this questionnaire and assessing, going in store and watching and assessing the various types of behaviors. And they compared the results of the assessment between top store managers, this line here, and bottom store managers, this line here. And so they came up with some recommendations. You can see they're circled here, actually. The interesting element to me is that this is properly data-driven on one hand, but also that there is a clear separation between top and bottom, maybe except for this dimension here. And this is sort of self-confirmation that the methodology we are using to identify top and bottom stores is actually working. Now, the second phase of this is the team has developed an assessment framework for retail leadership, and we were about to start the execution of this plan, but it's on hold because our stores are closed. But that is the plan, and the plan there is really to take this assessment, identify what is really working for us, what is important for us, and then assess all store managers, starting from store managers, see where they need to be trained, put them through the training, and then at a later stage monitor performance and take corrective actions. I'm going to pause here. Thank you very much, and I hope I was on time.
David? Just exactly on time, Alessandro. I've got time to ask you one question, and I think I know the answer, but I'll let you explain it. From Andrea Lizemar, I think all the way from Chile. Why did you choose to make the analysis at a team level and not an individual level in terms of knowing who the best performer is?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that's to be honest with you, I did start at the individual level. Because the focus was on team at the time, because of this, first of all, and because this is where it was going, this sort of assessment, and also because there is quite a bit of literature in the field that is showing how important the team is in a retail environment compared to individual. In fact, they say that the most important element of a retail team is the store manager. So we decided to start there.
So a nice example of combining a business challenge in your own organization, but actually looking at academic research as well, because it kind of, rather than trying to reinvent the wheel, as it were. So
yeah, I mean, even if you look at this one here, this is quite amazing to me. But so this was that 75. Let's look at 75 here. This is where the store where the store manager was changed. Now this looks like a made-up example, but first, David, but there is real data. But is also, and we have another example here. This is an action plan. The role of the store manager, it's not just the it's business data that is confirming the academic research, I think.
Yeah. I wish we had more time, Alessandro, but we need to transition to the next speaker. So thank you very much. Fascinating presentation. Really, really, really good to see, the value that people and analytics can have, at retail store level as well. So I look forward to hearing more from you in the coming months and years, I guess. And thank you, Alessandro.
Absolutely.